Good morning. This is Rob with the Florida Media Labs, and we're here discussing immigration with my young friend
Alvarez, sir.
Jorge Alvarez. And I'm sure that with a Hispanic last name, you may have some thoughts, some personal experiences around immigration.
Yes, actually, well, I'm Cuban and Puerto Rican. My dad being Cuban, my mother being Puerto Rican, and my dad left Cuba at the age of 7 in the 1960s. So that was obviously the communist era with Castro and all that. Came to the United States with not much but the clothes on his back. So I kind of have a relation in terms of starting fresh. You have when you come with nothing, it's really respect I have for those kind of people who build themselves up from truly nothing. You come not knowing the language, not knowing where you are really. You have to learn a lot of things, and you have to learn them quickly. So I kind of have respect for those kind of people, including my father, obviously. So he moved to Massachusetts, and that's where I was born and raised. And my mother grew up in Puerto Rico till she was 20. Technically, that's obviously a part of the United States, but still a whole new kind of transition when you're moving over here, learning English, learning the customs, learning new kinds of things in and around your environment. So both of them have a kind of relation to immigration, and through that, I kind of respect those kinds of people and um, to
Do you
really see
think,
why they do it.
do you think, Jorge, that your mother experienced any attitudes that were maybe not ideal as a young Puerto Rican woman
Um,
coming to the mainland?
my mother, I'm not too sure about but my father did definitely, most definitely. He came obviously during the time of segregation, so racist ideals were very vibrant and clear in daily American life during those times. So he did experience negative aspects when he first came, and throughout his life. His name was actually his name. I'm a third. I'm Jorge Alvarez the third, and he was the second. But when he first came, people weren't pronouncing his name correctly, and due to that, out of frustration, I guess when it was legally possible, he changed his name to George. So that's how highly he was affected by it. So yeah, I could see
Okay.
it was a very big struggle back then, and obviously it's a clear struggle for those kind of people today.
And you said that it's necessary to learn things very quickly to get up to speed when you come to a country
Yes, sir.
where you don't speak the language and you don't know anyone and you don't know the customs and you obviously have to make a living. You have to find a way to find a job.
Hmm.
And again, with limited communication skills, that's got to be more difficult. I can speak to that firsthand when I went to Quebec and didn't know how to speak French. So, would you say that your father was successful in that venture to learn the language and to sort of get assimilated into the mainstream?
I would say so. It did take him some time. I know he did not become a legal, true citizen until the age of 23, early 20s. I remember that. Another aspect was that he didn't learn full English until he was maybe in middle school, high school, around there. It took them some time. Obviously, they weren't really teaching English. They were teaching English classes, but it was for in terms of if you already knew English and learning grammar and things like that. So, and they're not going to adjust for simply one person, especially in a time growing up in an era like that. So it took him some time, but yes, I feel like he did assimilate well, and today he's doing perfectly fine as a father and as a man. So I think the process did go well for him.
And how old was he when he came to the U.S.?
7 years old.
At 7.
7.
So, what do you think about the folks that are showing up at the border in Texas and other southwestern states, and with children seeking asylum and having their children ripped from their arms and sent 2,000 miles away, and then they themselves being sent back to the country that they came from?
I can only imagine how devastating that is to be in terms of family and simply not knowing where your child is going to go. Separation. When you're leaving a country, people don't understand why they're leaving. Or I believe that the common misconception is they're coming here to cause havoc, to bring crime, to bring all the bad things that they're leaving that people think they're bringing with them. When most of the time, the case is they're simply looking for a better life. Simply the reason my father left, communism, looking for a better life. People forget that those are actual humans too. You have to put yourself in somebody else's shoes to understand why they're truly doing something. Um, I see the problem with immigration is they're not so many people are coming, but how it's handled, how they are coming. That detainment, all those private camps by the border are not they're not being run very well. There's complaints of missing toiletries, spoiled food, in some cases sexual abuse by other people that simply being in a crowded area. I think immigration can be handled a lot better than it is at the end of the day.
So what do you say to the person who concedes that not everybody's criminal, but says we already have a lot of unemployment over here? Why should we let immigrants come and take our jobs?
Well, actually, a common misconception is that there's a lot more. There's a big fluctuation of them coming in. When truly, today immigrants make up only 13% of the U.S. population. But from 1900 to 1980, they made between 12 and 15%. So it's not like the flux is a lot different today. It's about average. And that was a document taken, or a census taken in 2017. So it's very recent. That's a common misconception. There's a lot more of them than there really are. And also, in terms of undocumented immigrants, about 3.5% make up our population. But even with that 3.5%, they're not taking our corporate jobs. They're not taking our office jobs. They're not taking things that the average hardworking man would be doing. They're taking the jobs that nobody truly wants. And those jobs are at fault, not only the immigrants that they're being worked, but the people who hire them illegally. Not saying it's the best thing, but it's what is done. They will work for cents at an hour. They will do whatever is needed to do. And I just see that as kind of like a respect, that you'll do whatever you'll do to keep your family provided and safe, no matter what the case may be.
So you're saying that they should be respected instead of
yeah, you should look at them. Look at what they're doing. It's not
instead of resented.
Yes, that's what I think.
So you think that they don't affect the average person's ability to get a job in the United States?
I believe they do, in terms of a bigger economic scale. You have to look at it in terms of taxes not being paid. The taxes that people do pay go to some of the things that the undocumented ones get, such as healthcare, whatever those other services may be. Obviously, taxes pay for our law enforcement, all the government workers, roads, all those types of things that are being provided by the government and to be built and to be done. But I believe if we want to eliminate that problem or deal with the kind of undocumented illegal immigrants, we should make citizenship an easier process. Because people don't know that it takes, one of the biggest requirements of citizenship is you have to be a legal permanent resident or a green card holder for 5 years. So, and becoming a green card holder is a 1.5 to 2 year process. So in total, it's going to take you about 7 years, 7 to 10 actually, because you have to study for tests, you have to apply for several different applications, you have to prove that you can read and write English fluently to a certain standard that they hold you, and then there's a naturalization exam taken at the end, which I have actually seen parts of it or seen examples of it, and honestly, the common person would struggle with it. It's not the easiest test. It's a very tedious process that a lot of people aren't aware of.
So you're saying that naturalized citizens are usually smarter than the average?
I wouldn't say smarter, but it makes us seem like we're a lot smarter, the average citizen, what they're testing you by. When I would say some of the stuff I didn't even know, to be honest. And I think that a lot of the average person would struggle with some of the questions that they ask you about our history, about what's happened when, about a bunch of different aspects. I just don't think are as educated in as they're made to be. I think citizenship should definitely be made easier.
So if you had to list the top 3 problems with immigration, what would you say those top 3 are?
In terms of them, handling them coming here?
Just the top 3
Just
problems.
The top 3 problems.
In any sense.
The undocumentation, obviously them being illegal, how that affects, taxes, people coming into our workforce without being documented. That does mess up certain aspects of it. So the illegal part, how they are treated when they get here, and
how are they treated by citizens or by the government?
Overall, just the judgment, how they're looked at, how they're perceived as criminals, as both crazy people.
Both government and the people.
Yes, I would say so.
And okay, so that's the second. And the third?
And the third,
Do you think the scale of immigration is an issue?
How many are the influx of it? Yes and no. Yes, I think it's an issue, but I don't think it's as big of an issue as it is made to be. I think it's over exaggerated, overhyped for people to push their certain agendas.
Okay. So, we've got three problems. Now, what are the three solutions?
For the first one, for illegal, I believe that citizenship should definitely be made a shorter process. Like I said, it took my dad till he was in his early 20s to do it. He had been here since 7. I definitely think it should be made easier, and it should be made a much more realistic process. Instead of teaching them the history, not teaching them, you should teach them what is being taught, but to a lesser extent, teach them more about how to budget, how to run, how to do taxes here, how the American economic system works, how to find a job, how to get them on their feet, instead of just simply throwing papers and tests at them and telling them to study when they're already having trouble providing for their family as is. Yes, they should come here on a better accord, but once they get here, it should be made easier definitely for them to become one of the citizens of this great country.
So when you said come here in a better accord, we have a fairly large segment of the undocumented immigrants that are coming to our borders, coming from places like Guatemala, coming because they're under death threats in their community. How would you suggest they come here better than showing up at the border and asking for asylum?
That's something that I don't necessarily have a solution for. It's an idea. As of right now, it seems like that's all they really can do. I just think that once they come forward looking for asylum, that cry for help, that look for help, should be dealt with in a I wouldn't say in a kinder manner, but
in a more humane
way. That's a good way of putting it. Don't separate kids from their families. Don't have kids in court testifying who can barely understand. They don't even know what's going on as is. They just left their house. They just left everything they know in a matter of a short span of time, and now they're being separated from their families. You don't know what's going to happen when. And these camps are also privately owned, some of them at least, and so they're not really as monitored as they should be. So I think, just in a more humane way is definitely the answer. I don't have the exact solution, but you got to start somewhere with an idea.
So the second issue around the immigration problems had to do with the way they're viewed and treated by both government and American citizens. So how do we solve that problem?
That's on us. I don't believe that's on each individual's true mindset and how they view somebody else. The problem with racism is that
there's too much of it.
There's not necessarily there's too much of it. I mean, you can consider that an issue, but that it's an inbred thing from the ground up, I believe. Kids are either are raised to believe these thoughts, surrounded by these kind of thoughts, these racist emotions, these racist portrayals of people. So that's what they end up knowing. That's what they end up believing as they come up in their life. And when they're older, obviously it sticks with them because that's what they grew up with. So I believe it starts with not necessarily the older generations, but the ones that are coming up, and they should change how they teach their kids, how they raise their kids, what they teach them to believe in. That's where I believe racism would truly diminish in a certain way, is if the next generation were to instill more positive and better beliefs into their children.
And do you believe that if we change on a personal, individual level, that change will be reflected in our government behavior?
I'm not too sure, because like I said, it all stems on your mindset, on what you're believing. So if we get new officials in with different or better mindsets than the ones who are currently in, then that's the way I would see change. Because at the end of the day, it's their decisions. They're the one running things up there. So whatever they believe, not necessarily whatever they believe goes, but they have a strong influence on decisions. So it would have to come up to them changing their mindset, or people coming in with a different mindset.
And what was your third top issue around immigration?
I think we covered citizenship, how they're viewed, and let me see. How many are actually here? How many? The influx is not as serious as people make it to be, and they're not doing. Crime is not as high of a rate. I wrote that down too. Only about like 2,000 or not 2,000. 21% of all immigrants commit crimes in America. It's not as big of a scale. Everybody portrays it to be. Every single one comes in here, dealing drugs, killing people, bringing the chaos that they left with them. And that 21% was taken in 2012. So the census hasn't been done since then, or if it has, I cannot recover it. But obviously, I think things have changed since then, or they have updated in a sense.
Yeah, so I've heard it reported that immigrants commit crimes at a lower rate per population than American citizens do.
Mm-hmm.
So, and it makes sense because if you know that if you get into trouble, you're going to be deported, you're probably going to be a lot more careful.
Yes, of course.
To not be creating.
People fail to look at that little bridge of logic. Why would you leave a terrible life to go create a worse life in a new area where, the classic phrase, land of opportunity, why would you come here and ruin it for yourself? They're coming here to do better.
So it's been a pleasure talking with you, Jorge. We're going to take a break here and we'll pick this back up in a few minutes. And Jorge Alvarez, appreciate your time in this important discussion about a very critical issue of the day here in America, and we'll have you back here in just a few minutes.
All right, thank you, sir.
Mainly, I wanted to